Hi, I'm Ricky. I'm one half of. Hi, I'm Ricky. I'm one half of the tender trainers. So we at the tender trainers, we train subcontractors on how to tender effectively. Our goal is basically to make this process as simple and successful as possible so you can win those bigger contracts with less stress. I try and do these lives on a regular basis. So yeah, feel free to jump on, ask me a question, or also DM me if you feel like there's a good topic to cover. I'd be happy to do it. All right, cool. Let's get into it. So the topic that I've chosen to talk about today is around accreditations. So we do get asked this by our members. So I thought it'd be good to just jump on here and talk about it. So with accreditations, there are a lot of companies, particularly the larger main contractors, who have a minimum accreditation requirement. So for example, I previously worked for Mace, and they require the Common Assessment Standard to work for them. And there are a lot of other companies that were required to have certain memberships like Chaz or Construction Line or Safe Contractor, SMAS, Builders Profile. There's a few of them out there. I'm sure you've heard of a lot of them. So there are companies out there that will require you to have a certain membership or a certain certification. Unfortunately, sometimes what this means is that to work for multiple companies, you need multiple memberships. This isn't exactly right, but for example, to work with company A, you need to have Chaz. To work with company B, you need Construction Line. So to work with both, you might need Chaz and Construction Line. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. But just if you're not sure on what the Common Assessment Standard is, this is becoming more and more prevalent. What this is, it's an attempt to standardize pre-qualification. So what it is it's a standard set of questions to qualify you to work for the company. So it really is standardizing the PQQ questions. And the idea is that companies who are compliant with this, so they're compliant with the Common Assessment Standard, and a company accepts the Common Assessment Standard, like what Mace do, then it doesn't matter which body you got the Common Assessment Standard through, which should hopefully reduce the amount of memberships that you acquire. You get the Common Assessment Standard with Chaz Elite and Construction Line Gold, for example. And with my example for Mace, just to hone it in, it doesn't matter whether you got it through Chaz or Construction Line Gold, as long as you've got the Common Assessment Standard, you're okay. So there are more and more companies signing up to that, like Belford Beatties and Mace and those kind of companies that will accept the Common Assessment Standard. But not everyone has yet. So you're also going to come across companies that they also just require you to have their pre-qualification question filled in, and some that will just require you to have a certain membership. So one thing we do recommend with this, talking in this breath, is that it's always a good idea to do a little bit of research on who your target client is and understand what they require and kind of move towards that direction. So for example, in your future, if you're like, yep, we're going to work for Mace, I've already told you, but if you did a bit of research, you'd find out that they require you to have the Common Assessment Standard, and you can move towards having that being ready to work for your target client. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that explains a little bit. Now, I want to talk about what we recommend, so through my experience. So what we recommend minimum that you have when you start tendering and working for companies is a couple of things. One, we recommend minimum that you have an SSIP accreditation. So again, bodies like Chaz, Construction Line, you're going to get this. You're going to get this SSIP accreditation. And the second thing that we recommend minimum that you have is any trade accreditation or certificate for your line of work. So that is For example, NIC, EIC for sparkies, gas safe for your plumbers, FireUS for your fire safety, etc., depending on what your trade is. So they're the two things that minimum that we recommend you have: SSIP accreditation and your trade certificate for your line of work. So why an SSIP? So the reason is that an SSIP accreditation, SSIP stands for Safety Schemes in Procurement. This accreditation, what it is, when you've got it, it's a third-party confirmation that you have the documentation in place to be compliant with the CDM 2015 regulations. So the CDM 2015 regulations are the main health and safety regulations. And because they're regulations, you're legally required to comply with them. So it is a legal requirement to comply with the CDM 2015 regulations. Now, under the CDM 2015 regulations, the client must also check that you're compliant with them before you work for them. So if you have this SSIP accreditation, it's third-party verification that you are compliant with them. And for your client, your potential client, that's a tick that you comply with it. You've got a certificate from a third-party accreditor. And if you don't have an SSIP accreditation, they technically need to review your documents. They need to review your health and safety plan and all the documents that you have in place and make this determination for themselves that you're compliant. So you can see how it looks good in the eyes of the client if you're coming in with a certificate that says, boom, tick, you are compliant with CDM 2015, right? So it's also kind of good in the client's eyes if you have the ISOs, for example. So your ISO 9001 for quality, ISO 14001 for environment, ISO 45001 for health and safety. These are more the pinnacle of the accreditations and something we recommend you be moving towards obtaining. But minimum, you should have SSIP. And that's not just to tender, in my view, that is to work as well as a contractor. Okay, so in summary, some but not all clients will require an accreditation to work for them. So do some research on your target clients, who you want to work for, find out what they require to work for them, and you can start moving towards that. And also, make sure minimum that you have an SSIP accreditation and any other trade certification for your trade, for your line of work. Okay, that's it. That's it for today. Yeah, stay tuned. I'll cover another impactful tendering topic soon. Yep, that's it. Thank you, and see you again soon.